Welcome back to Movie Recap. Today I'm gonna show you a 2009 Australian war film called Balibo. Spoilers ahead. Sit back, relax and enjoy the video. The movie begins with the interview of Juliana da Costa, born in Dili, a single mother of 4, and a witness of the cruelty that her country experienced when the world turned a blind eye when Indonesia invaded East Timor. In 1975, East Timor declared independence from the Portuguese after 400 years. Unfortunately, 9 days after that, they were invaded by Indonesia. Juliana travels for hours to attend an interview and tell her story about what happened in Dili last December 1975. According to Juliana, she was 8 years old during that time, and her father sent her to her grandmother's house on the other side of the town. She also adds that everyone knows that their country is about to be invaded. There were 7 of them in the car, and they planned to go to the mountains to hide, but they were stopped and captured by the army. The interviewer asks Juliana if she knows someone from the crowd during that time, and she answers, she knows Roger East, an Australian journalist. It is a normal busy day in Australia in 1975. Jose Ramos-Horta visits Roger East in his office, but tells his secretary to inform Horta that he is busy. Despite being avoided, Horta is persistent to speak to Roger. During Roger's lunch break, Horta interrupts him and introduces himself as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs in East Timor. He also adds that the reason why he travels for a long time is to relay his proposition to him. After work, Roger invites him to his house. Horta tells him that he reads much of his works and enjoys them. The two have a great time talking about Roger's work while drinking alcohol when suddenly Horta asks Roger's permission to speak openly. He tells him that he is unique because he writes with passion and delivers important things that matter to the world. That's why on behalf of his government, he would like to offer him to be the head of their news agency in East Timor that will give him access to their country and its people. He asks for his decision because the matter is urgent, and they desperately need his help in telling the world their story. The next morning, Roger wakes up with the news that the Netherlands government is preparing its force in the possible Indonesian invasion, but the Indonesia keeps on denying it. Horta receives a phone call. After that, he hurriedly packs his things to leave, and tells Roger that his country is about to close the flights going to his country, so he needs to decide now if he will help them. Roger refuses the offer, and tells Horta to look for a younger journalist because he is already retired. Horta answers that Roger's country has already sent 5 young journalists, but they are nowhere to be found. He hands over the documents that contain the information of the missing journalists, then leaves. That night, Roger checks the documents, and afterwards gets the courage to finally accept Horta's offer, and finds his missing colleagues. The next morning, he goes to a journalist who just arrived from East Timor. Roger tells him about Horta's offer to run the East Timor Free Press, but the journalist thinks it is insane, and testifies that the Indonesians' warships are off the coast, and are preparing for the invasion. He also adds that it is very dangerous to go there because the Indonesians are already on the ground, and are not in uniform, that's why they don't know who to trust. Roger asks if he sees the journalists of Channel 7 and 9 on his way out, and he answers that he saw Shackleton, and warned him about the danger, but he didn't listen. The next day, Roger prepares his things to go to East Timor, and checks what happened to his colleagues. The names of the 5 missing journalists are Brian Peters, Tony Stewart, Gary Cunningham, Greg Shackleton, and Malcolm Rennie. Finally, Roger arrives in Hotel Turismo in Dili, East Timor. He checks the logbook, and finds the names of the missing journalists. The young Juliana welcomes Roger while Juliana's father prepares a delicious fish for him. Roger asks Juliana's father to join him for a glass of wine, then asks him about his missing journalists. He answers that they were there 3 weeks ago and went to Balibo. He also adds that Horta is the one who arranged their trip. After his scrumptious meal, Roger teaches Juliana on how to toss a coin, which she successfully learned fast. Juliana informs Roger that the missing journalists left their bags in the hotel. Roger checks it and finds some tapes and personal belongings of the journalists. The next day, Roger meets Horta and asks why he didn't inform him that he was the one who arranged the journalist's trip to Balibo. He admits that he was the one who arranged it, but only if it was safe. Roger is very disappointed and asks Horta if there are other things that he forgot to tell him. Roger also insists on meeting the driver who drove the journalist to Balibo. At first, Horta refused because of the danger, and he has a lot of things to do in Dili, but Roger is persistent, so he makes a deal that he will bring him to the driver, but after that, they will go back to Dili and run their news agency. Roger and Horta finally arrive in Mobara and see a terrible situation. There are a lot of wounded soldiers from the front lines. Horta says that they will spend the night there, and they will look for the driver the next day. Roger wakes up and sees that the armed men bid goodbye to their loved ones. Horta explains that the Indonesians are advancing the war, so everyone needs to retreat to Dili. He also introduces him to the driver who drove his colleagues, but only gives them 5 minutes to talk. He asks him about the whereabouts of the journalists, and the driver answers that he drove for them in Balabo, but during the time that they need to go, the journalists are nowhere to be found. Horta cuts the conversation, but Roger finds hope that they are still alive, so he asks the driver to draw him a map to Balabo. Horta says that it is impossible to go there because the roads are blocked, but Roger insists that they can go there on foot, but it will take them 12 to 14 hours. Aside from the danger, Horta also thinks that Roger cannot endure the trip because of his age. Despite the consequences, they still go to Balabo to find the journalists. On their way to the location, a helicopter flies above and shoots them. Luckily, they escape the hands of death. The scene of the missing journalists is shown wherein they arrive in a chapel. They see people walking towards the mountain, and the priest says that they are refugees fleeing from the border. The journalists are delighted upon hearing that there is a swimming pool at the back of the chapel. They happily swim together with the locals. Despite the fear, the journalists still go to Balabo. While they are conducting a report, a bomb suddenly explodes. They hurriedly ride the van and escape. After the accident that Roger experienced, he tells Horta that he wants to go home and cannot do the task anymore. He is extremely devastated and scared to death. Horta asks what will happen to the missing journalists and to the people of his country if he will stop now, but Roger has already decided and answers that there are other people stronger than him that will help the journalists, and the problem of Horta's country is not his problem. Horta is very disappointed with Roger's answer. He mentions that the helicopter who tried to kill them is from America, and the reason why the helicopter found and shot them in the middle of nowhere is because of the intelligence that is provided by Roger's Australian government, and they are also the one who told the Indonesians that he and the missing journalists are there. Another scene of the journalists is shown. After they escape the bombing, they hide in the secluded village and interview the locals there. The locals ask the questions why the Indonesians would like to invade their country, why the Portuguese didn't help them, and why the world doesn't care about their sufferings. The journalists are moved, and promise them that they will help them find out the answers to their questions. Going back to Roger and Horta, they arrive in a village, and see a lot of dead bodies of young and old, men and women on the ground. They burst into tears upon seeing the situation. After that, they help the survivors bury the bodies of their loved ones. The situation is very heartbreaking. Horta tells Roger that the journalists are already killed by the Indonesian army just like what happened to his people, so they should stop the search and go back, but Roger insists on continuing and going to Balabo because he still believes that there are still survivors there. He wants to know what happened to the journalists and give them justice. Horta exclaims with disappointment that Roger only cares for the journalists, but not the innocent people who died because of this war. Roger answers that he also cares for them, but the people whom he is writing for don't care about the thousands of brown people who died, and that news will only go to the last page of the newspaper, but if he will find out what happened to the missing Australian journalists, that news will probably go to the front page. They get offended with each other's words, and that ends up in a physical fight. They jump in the swimming pool, and struggle with each other. Horta cannot take it anymore, so he gets out from the water, and tells Roger that everything's over, and no one will even know that they existed, and warns Roger that he will surely die if he will continue his trip to Balabo, then leaves. Going back to the scene with the 5 journalists, they are busy taking videos of the Indonesian ships off the coast. After they shot the video, they ask a man to keep the tape, and bring it to the authorities so they will know what's going on. After that, one of the journalists paints the name of their country, Australia, and their national flag, thinking that it will protect them from harm, and imagine that the place will be an Australian embassy in the future. Roger falls asleep after his fierce fight with Horta. He wakes up with a strange sound that comes from another room. He gets up to check it, and is very surprised that 2 of Horta's men are torturing a wounded man. Roger tries to stop them, and exclaims that they should not do that because he is one of them, but the men answer that he is a traitor that helped Indonesians take Balabo. The wounded man says that some dead bodies were dragged into the Chinese house, including the journalists. Roger asks one of Horta's men to accompany him to the Chinese house that the wounded man mentioned. The man says that it is possible, but dangerous. Despite the consequences, Roger still goes there. Going back to the scene with the 5 journalists, the man warns them that they only have a few minutes left to prepare because the Indonesians are about to attack. A man tries to convince the journalists to escape, but they are persistent to shoot the situation, so that people will know what is happening. They go near the location, and see that the enemies are changing their clothes as disguised. The enemies arrive, and the journalists run for their lives. They finally enter a room, and hide there with all the videos that they shoot. They peek in a hole to check what's going on outside. One of the journalists decides to go out, and talk to them thinking that they will not harm them because they are Australian journalists, but unfortunately he shoots him in the head. After that, the enemies go inside the room, and kill the 3 other journalists. One of the journalists runs outside, and tries to save the film, but unfortunately, the enemies catch, and kill him as well. That evening, Roger bravely decides to go to Balibo with Horta's man. He is heartbroken to see the room filled with blood stains where the journalists were killed. They see ashes, and realize that the dead bodies were burned there. In the morning, on the way out to Balibo, a group of men arrive. Horta's man tells Roger that he will lead the enemies away for him to escape. After that, he hears gunshots. Roger bravely goes through the river in the forest. He is very tired and exhausted. He stares at the fish in the river. Then suddenly, he is already in Hotel Turismo's restaurant, and in front of him is the fish that Juliana's father prepared for him. Julia's father gives him a wine to celebrate because he returned safe and alive. Roger tells Juliana's father to leave the place for the sake of his daughter, but he refuses because he thinks that the hotel still needs him, so he will just send Juliana to his grandmother to hide. Horta arrives, and eats with Roger, and tells him that something remarkable happened when he was away. His people find out his quest in finding his colleagues, so they would like to reveal the truth. Horta asks Roger to come with him, and leave East Timor because according to their intelligence, Indonesia is about to invade the whole country, but Roger refuses because he thinks that if he leaves, no journalist will be left to reveal the truth. Roger reveals the truth of what happened to the missing journalists in the news. While writing his report, he suddenly hears a loud noise outside. When he checks it, he sees a terrifying situation wherein the Indonesian army is invading the place. Unfortunately, they don't have enough time to escape. The Indonesian army enters his office, and drags him out of the building. They also destroy all his equipment. They kill innocent and harmless people. Roger shouts, and tells them that he is an Australian journalist, but the army still kill him. All these things are witnessed by the young Juliana. The movie ends with Juliana's interview. There is a note that more than 8,000 Timorese came forward to tell their stories about the Indonesian colonization. They confirm that more than 183,000 East Timorese died during this time. Horta represented his country in exile for 24 years, and received a Nobel Peace Prize last 1996, and in 1999, he finally returned to his homeland, after its liberation from Indonesian rule. Unfortunately, the killers of Roger and the journalists were not determined. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.